Hey everybody, welcome on our channel. In this video we are gonna see, what if Naruto got harem with Ty Lee, Azula and Suki. Part 1. Huge shout out to Zaara the Black for this story. If you are new on the channel, don't forget to subscribe our channel and like the video too. So without wasting any more time, let's start the story. The large black warship was cruising smoothly through the Fire Nation waters, as if a knife through butter. It was the middle of the day with the sun at its peak and the warriors on the ship at their maximum level of power. Standing on the deck were numerous warriors in black armor that was rimmed red and Skullmask's helmet. They practiced the most deadly form of fighting in their world, firebending. Of course they didn't have the skills to compare to the girl overlooking them. Princess Azula of the Fire Nation royal family. Azula at 16 stood at 5'4" with an athletic frame that had firm cup wrists, curves that made her a desired young woman, and long powerful legs. Her amber eyes looked like they shined with malice and evil intent that promised pain on any unwanted advances and failure. Her black hair was pulled into a top knot with two long bangs framing her face. Azula wore red lipstick that went well with her eyes, a gold Fire Nation princess piece that was custom made just for her hair, wearing a long sleeve maroon shirt with black armor and gold trim sitting over it that went down to her knees, as it was made of a flexible steel that only hindered her movements by 3%. Skin-tight red pants that would have given many a good view had it not been for her armor, and knee-high black boots with gold trim going down the middle and around the mouth of the boot. "Hey Azula, how long before we get to our destination? I'm getting bored," said a girl next to her. Azula chuckled. "We should be there soon, but in the meantime we could always play Ty Lee," said Azula. Ty Lee was one of Azula's oldest friend servants and most recently Feck's toy. Ty Lee was a cheerful girl that was only a few months younger than Azula. She stood at the same height as Azula, except her form was much more lithe and flexible with her almost E-cup wrists. She had the kindest brown eyes that made one question why she was friends with the Fire Nation princess. Long brown hair pulled into a single braid that went to the middle of her back. She wore clothes that went well with her fighting style. A mid-sleeve pink and red shirt that was tied around her wrists and showed off her toned stomach, tight pants that stopped just under her knees, and 4 red flower-like parts attached to her waist, and a pair of light shoes. Azula reached over and cupped Ty Lee's face, making the cheery girl shiver in anticipation. Azula liked to make Ty Lee submit to her, almost always turning her into a begging, drooling mess before she passes out. "I'd like that, but can you tell me why we're out here again?" asked Ty Lee. Azula shrugged as she stood. "Follow me," said Azula. Ty Lee did a quick flip upwards and landed on her feet like the master acrobatic she was before she followed after Azula. The walk was quick and they soon found themselves outside of Azula's room. Ty Lee stripped of her clothes and left them in a pile on the floor. Since Azula had a hall to herself, it was safe to leave their clothes in the hall, although Azula never did. Azula stripped off her armor and dressed in an open robe and high heels, leaving her hair down before walking into the room. Azula smiled and sat on Ty Lee's stomach and gave her a passionate kiss on the lips. "That's my girl," said Azula, getting up and walking over to her vanity mirror and pulling her hair into a loose ponytail. Ty Lee sat up and covered herself with a silk sheet as she looked at her mistress. "Where are we going, Azula?" asked Ty Lee as she looked at a map of the Fire Nation. Azula looked at the map and pointed to an island that was about half a day or more from their current position. "Uzumaki Island," said Azula. Ty Lee gasped and looked at Azula as if she was crazy. "Are you out of your mind? That island is forbidden, Azula," said Ty Lee, knowing she would pay for that later. Azula looked at Ty Lee and let the comment about her sanity slide before standing up. "Yes, it is. A tower sits on that island. The very first Avatar sealed it up almost 2,000 years ago and proclaimed that it was the royal family's job to watch over it and make sure that what is sealed inside never gets out. My father told me, as did his father, and so on and so forth. Now here's where we come to the difference," said Azula, pushing Ty Lee onto the ground and forcing the tip of her foot into Ty Lee's front, making her scream. "Tower. My family has always feared what was in that tower, but I know that whatever it is powerful and it needs to be used, wants to be used, and if it desires a master, then I shall be that master," said Azula, planning to punish Ty Lee. All the crew heard for the rest of the day were Ty Lee's screams of pain and Azula's screams of pleasure. Uzumaki Island next morning. Azula took her first step on Uzumaki Island and shivered. A dark presence was in the air and all the soldiers could feel it. Ty Lee, who was aura sensitive because of the training she underwent to be a master of the paralyzing palm, was almost whimpering. The sand of the beach was like normal sand, but that's where everything ended. The trees, while a normal shade of green, appeared dead in a way. On the top of a far-off hill was a tower. The tower was red and yellow at the top. It also had a strange sign that was the ancient symbol of the Fire Nation. "I want 3 guards up front," said Azula as her stable master brought over 2 mongoose dragons. Azula and Ty Lee mounted the dragons as they slowly made their way through the thick forest. As they did, the dark energy in the area began to get even stronger. Half an hour into the ride, Ty Lee fell off her dragon and began to throw up. Ty Lee felt like her body was on fire from all the darkness around her. "Ty Lee!" yelled Azula, dismounting her dragon and helped Ty Lee sit up slightly with her hands on her neck and waist. Ty Lee looked at Azula. "Azula. It's so dark here. Whatever is in there is so dark that there is no light," said Ty Lee barely above a whisper before she passed out. Azula glared at the tower before rounding on two guards. "You two take Ty Lee back to the ship, and if there is so much as a bump on her body, I will make your death slow and very very painful," said Azula, making the two guards nearly piss themselves in fear of the princess. Azula turned and raised her fist before firing off a blast of blue flames that made the trees burst into flames. Azula walked forward, rage clear in her amber eyes. So minutes later. It took the small group 20 minutes to reach the foot of the tower. Two steel doors blocked the way, but Azula would not be deterred. Two other firebenders lined up with her and in a triple blast of fire. The blast was strong enough to melt the doors, so Azula advanced inside. However, the second her foot touched the ground inside, a massive blast of wind collided with her. Azula covered her face with her arms, but felt the wind rip through her armor, tearing off the left shoulder pad. Azula looked up as the wind died down. She was trying to figure out what it was, but her stomach was getting warm and her beat damp. It was no secret that Azula found power intoxicating, but power turned her on greatly, especially when she had power over someone like Ty Lee, who was submissive. Azula started to slowly walk to the top of the stairs with her guards following her. When they reached the top of the stairs, they saw a barred door with 4 pieces of paper at each corner and one in the center. The cell was about 10 by 10 feet. Inside was a body. It looked like a young man. Her age, or maybe a bit older, probably about 6'1". He had blonde hair that fell almost to his knees, 3 whisker-like marks on each cheek, tanned skin with a build that made Azula unconsciously lick her lips. He wore a black shirt, a black coat with long sleeves and black clouds on it, with a high collar turned down, dark blue pants, and black boots. On his chest was another of those paper tags. "What is this?" asked Azula, looking around. She looked at the walls and saw an ancient language she didn't recognize, and Azula was good at reading quite a few of the old tongues. "Looks like a prison of some sort," said the captain. Azula narrowed her eyes slightly. "I don't know how, but the paper is the only thing keeping him inside." "Take the paper down," said Azula. While the captain wanted to argue on the foolishness of such a bold move, the others had already started to remove the paper. Once the paper, the cell door glowed blue for a minute before it faded into nothingness. "Are you alive?" asked Azula, looking at the boy. One of the soldiers. "Hey boy, the princess is talking to you," yelled the man holding his lance at the boy. The boy's head was still down. Azula began to get slowly more agitated. She walked forward and unleashed a blast of her famous blue fire at the boy, lighting him up like a hellish bonfire. After a full minute of this, Azula stopped and looked with a shocked face as the boy was unharmed. "What the hell?" asked a soldier. Azula walked forward and placed her hand on the tag. She jumped back as she was shocked. Smoke rose off her hand. She looked back as the tag started to burn off of the boy's chest. She flexed it, trying to let the pain reside, when a hand shot up and grabbed her by her throat. The grip tightened as she was lifted off the ground a good 2 feet. Azula looked as the boy stood up. She gripped his arm, trying to get him to let go. The bangs of his hair covered his eyes. He looked up and Azula gasped. His eyes were the most beautiful shade of blue she had ever seen in her life, but behind them was power and strength long forgotten. "Good morning. Who are you?" asked a blonde so casually that it could almost be assumed that they were having a nice conversation. 2 of the guards charged at the boy before they burst into flames. Azula began to sweat as the edges of her vision began to fade to black. "Princess Azula of the Fire Nation," said Azula in a choked sort of way. The boy dropped Azula. "Are you the one who removed that seal from my chest?" asked the boy. "A seal? Is that what those pieces of paper were?" thought Azula as she slowly stood up. "Yes. And let me tell you, it's a real pain in the face when you get those things slapped on you and around you," said the boy, popping his joints. "Yes, I did," said Azula, coughing slightly. The boy got to one knee and grabbed Azula's hand before kissing it. Normally anyone who did this would have been burned to a crisp, but Azula felt something stir in her as her cheeks gained a light pink shade to them. "Then you have my gratitude. I have been trapped here for many years. From this day forward I am your shield, I am your sword. I am your halyard and I am the instrument of your will," said the boy. Azula looked at him. "If you are to buy my instrument, then I need a name for you," said Azula. The boy looked at Azula and smiled. "In the days of old I was born with the name of Naruto. The Yellow Death," said the blonde with a grin. Ty Lee slowly awoke and looked around. She found herself in Azula's room and quickly remembered that she passed out. Ty Lee got out of the bed and made her way to the door to see if Azula was back. The second she touched the door, she felt it. The darkness she felt was back, only this time much closer. Azula is in danger, said Ty Lee, ripping the door open and tearing down the hall and to the deck. On the deck she saw Azula walk onto the ship. Ty Lee ran forward and hugged Azula. Ty Lee. The Fire Nation princess said in warning. Azula, I was so worried about you. Are you okay? Asked Ty Lee. I'm fine, said Azula, looking at her friend in confusion. Yes you are, said a boy behind Azula. Ty Lee looked at the person and blushed at how cute he was. She looked at his clothes. The most telltale thing about him was how tattered the jacket was. She got away from Azula and into Naruto's face. Naruto looked at her with a strange look that Ty Lee knew to be lust. But Azula was the only one allowed to have her body in such a way, however that didn't mean she couldn't tease him. My name is Ty Lee, cutie, said Ty Lee, licking her lips slightly. Teasing men always got her excited for Azula. Naruto smirked and grabbed Ty Lee by her face and gave it a hard squeeze, making her jump. Ty Lee. A cute name for a cute girl. My name is Naruto, Azula's new weapon, said Naruto. Ty Lee got a shocked look on her face as she looked at Azula, who just smirked. I told you, Ty Lee, power is what I want and I always get what I want, said Azula with a smile. Ty Lee smiled at Naruto before giving him a Ty Lee hug. Goody, we'll be the best of friends, said Ty Lee. She didn't know how right she was. 4 days later. Naruto sat on the deck of the ship with nothing to do. A lot had changed over the last 1500 years he was sealed away. It appeared that chakra still existed, but now in the form of bending skills. Naruto himself could do fire bending thanks to the former Kyuubi, but he preferred the hand-to-hand combat. Naruto chuckled as his thoughts drifted to Ty Lee and Azula. He could tell by the way Ty Lee submitted to Azula that the girl was her loyal fish to the end. He had also heard the screams of pain pleasure that Ty Lee gave off at night and sometimes during the day when Azula wasn't training. Naruto stood up and began to stretch to get rid of the kinks in his joints. After all, it had a long time since he had fought. Naruto quickly went through a few of his katas. After that he started to practice low-level fire bending that he had seen the Solders use. He stopped when Azula arrived on deck. Naruto looked at Azula as she walked up to him. The way she moved satisfied that her sleeping arrangement with Ty Lee had been quite satisfying. Hello Azula, said Naruto. Good morning Naruto. I wish to ask you a few questions, said Azula, walking over to her throne on the ship. Naruto followed Azula, admiring her face as he did so. It had been so long since Naruto had felt the touch of a woman that he was tempted to turn Azula into a mindless slut, but he owed her for freeing him. Just like he promised he would be her sword and shield. Naruto crossed his arms and sat down in front of Azula. What do you want to know, Azula? Asked Naruto. Azula snapped her fingers as a servant went to get some tea. I wish to know why you were trapped in that prison, said Azula. Naruto tilted his head to the side. Oh, that. I became a danger to the people of my time and they got fearful of my power. If anything, I was a god amongst men, said Naruto. Azula raised an eyebrow as her servant brought her some jasmine tea. Azula had to admit one thing her uncle was right about, it was the fact she was a jasmine lover. What do you mean god amongst men? Said Azula, taking a sip of her tea. On the day I was born my father sealed a powerful demon inside of me. It took nearly 20 years, but on my 20th birthday the demon vanished and I gained its limitless power. I became so strong that the people of my home gave me the title of Hokage out of fear, said Naruto. Hokage? What is a Hokage? Asked Azula, confused by the term. Naruto smiled. It means fire shadow. I was the 6th shadow of my village. My sensei Jiraiya, my teacher, believed that I was the child of prophecy to bring peace or ruination to the world. Unfortunately I brought peace, said Naruto as a meal of fish, rice, and soup was placed in front of him. Azula looked at Naruto. What do you mean unfortunately? Asked the Fire Princess. Naruto took a bite of his rice. Tension means aggression, aggression means battle, battle means shinobi. The way we lived, it was a fragile peace at best and open war at worst. Sometimes allied villages were put against each other in combat. When I brought peace it was a short-lived peace. Within a year, an ungrateful fish by the name of Sakura Haruno started to gain support to have me removed from the position of Hokage because of personal and political reasons. At first it was just the political ring, then it got to the missions. Before long she was ready to start a civil war. Naruto paused and took a sip of tea. So before she could strike, I struck first. I destroyed her clan compound using one of my top sleeper agents by the name of Hinata Hyuga to kill the entire clan. Of course this was the straw that broke the camel's back. More than half the village turned on me along with several of our allies. They wised to return to the fragile peace. That was the start of the 5th Great War. That lasted for nearly 10 years until the rebels did something so evil, so terrible that I lost control of myself, said Naruto, looking into his now empty cup of tea. Azula was mesmerized by the story and was very eager to hear the rest. What happened? Asked Azula. Naruto closed his eyes. My wife Hinata, her best friend and bodyguard Tenten, took a sword that I gave her for loyalty to my family and killed Hinata," whispered Naruto as he allowed killing intent to raise off his body, making many of the Sauters on deck drop to their knees. "At that point I didn't care about that damn prophecy, at that time I didn't care about the war, all I cared about was making that fish and all those traitors pay. I unleashed everything I had. For years I had built up my wrath to such a level that I finally snapped, letting everyone and everything know that I was pissed. I don't know how long I was in my rage. Weeks, months, years, but by the time I came down from my rage, I had destroyed more than half the continent and killed off 3/5 of all the people. After that I had to rest, I sleep for a few days, and soon I was attacked by a group of 2,000 men. They attacked and I had little strength left to defend myself. I still managed to kill a good number of them before they captured me and sealed me away in that tower of my former home." Naruto let out a chuckle. "The tower that had cursed me had become my tomb," finished Naruto, slowly calming down. Azula was surprised by this and saw parallels of their history with her own. "Tell me something, Naruto. As you are aware, we have been fighting a 100-year war. Do you believe that history would repeat itself with the Avatar now being that child of prophecy?" Naruto looked at Azula, locking his blue eyes with her amber orbs. "That I cannot answer, Azula. Well, I was once a sage. I was relieved of that title when I turned my back on the Toad teachings of peace," said Naruto. Azula nodded at this. "Very well, Naruto. You may go. Also, I know that currently you have urges that need satisfying. That servant girl is yours to do with until we return to the palace," said Azula as she clapped her hands. The servant girl from before appeared and bowed to her mistress. Naruto focused on her and smirked. She had long black hair and black eyes. From the looks of her, she was about 22 to 23, her figure suggested that she had given birth at least once and had regained her figure quickly. With semi-large wrists and long legs. Her outfit consisted of a kimono-like skirt with a red sash. "Naruto, this is Ming. Your new bedmate for the rest of the trip," said Azula with a smile. Ming bowed to Naruto. "My lord," said Ming. Naruto stood up and motioned for her to follow. He had 1,500 years of sexual build-up and Ming was going to help relieve him of most of it. 2 weeks later. Azula walked up to Naruto's door and heard an earth-shattering scream that no bot belonged to Ming. No one had seen Ming or Naruto for the last 2 weeks, unless it was the servant girl sent to bring them food and water, and even then they weren't seen for at least an hour if not 4. Azula opened the door and saw Naruto still thrusting into Ming, who had all but passed out, both sweating heavily. Naruto turned his head to look at Azula, who was decked out in full battle regulate. Naruto gave one last thrust and came inside of Ming, who gave a small moan on pleasure at being full once again. "You broke her," said Azula as more of a statement than a question. Naruto nodded with a grin that threatened to split his face in half and walked over to his robe, giving Azula a good view of his manhood. He was large, no question. He was easily a foot long and at least 3 wide if what she was seeing was right. Azula licked her lips and gave him a lust-filled look, but she planned to contain herself. The moans that had come from Naruto's room had made her really horny. Naruto pulled on some red pants with a black double belt, black boots, a red robe shirt with semi-loose long sleeves, chest armor, and a black vest. After Naruto quickly dressed, he put the covers over the now sleeping Ming. "What's happening?" asked Naruto as he walked out and fell a step behind Azula. "We'll be docking in 20 minutes, said Azula. Naruto raised a brow at this. "Why 20? Asked Naruto. Azula turned on Naruto and put a finger in his chest. "We're working at less than 20% because of you. You kept most of the crew horny and tired," said Azula. Naruto smirked. "Price of keeping me happy," said Naruto. Azula snorted and walked onto the deck. Naruto saw Ty Lee on the left side of Azula's throne with very red cheeks. "Hey there, Naruto," said Ty Lee a bit timidly. Naruto raised a brow at this. "What? Afraid that I'll tuck you mindless, Ty Lee?" asked Naruto. Ty Lee blush deepened. "No. I just haven't had the chance to really talk with you is all," said Ty Lee, thinking of the aura she saw when she walked past Naruto's quarters. The aura was so strong that it had made Ty Lee a walking mess of hormones and sexual tension. It had nearly turned her into a nympho with how much she had to beg Azula to please her. Azula turned a glare to Naruto, who didn't back down. "Enough. Take your seat. Once we land we are to start our track to the palace," said Azula. Naruto's face lost its grin and he gained the look of a regal lord and a killer. Azula even shivered at how fast he changed personalities. All in all, she was glad that she was his master instead of the other way around. 20 minutes later. The ship came into port and they were anchored to the port. Azula stepped out of the ship and quickly mounted a Komodo rhino with Naruto walking alongside her and Ty Lee riding behind her. A guard of 200 soldiers formed around her as they marched through the capital city and to the palace. Along the way, people cheered for their princess and her convoy. Naruto looked at the people, keeping an eye on them. Azula noticed Naruto's look and just smiled at him. Naruto, relax, we are in the heart of the Fire Nation where no one would dare attack me, said Azula. Naruto looked at Azula and smiled. You're right, but I'd like to sample more Fire Nation women to see if they stack up to Ming, said Naruto. Ty Lee jumped down off the rhino and onto Naruto's back, wrapping her legs around his waist and arms around his neck. Naruto's hand quickly found their way to her plump face, keeping her up. What do you mean, whiskers? Asked Ty Lee. Naruto raised a brow at this. Whiskers? Asked Naruto. Ty Lee touched his whisker marks, and Naruto began to purr in delight. Azula looked at Naruto and started to laugh lightly, at least until she saw a bulge growing in his pants. She blushed as she quickly came to the conclusion that not only were his whisker-like marks sensitive, but they aroused him greatly. She would file this away for later. Naruto shook his head to clear the grogginess. He turned to Ty Lee with a lust-filled glare that made her blush. I suggest that you not do that again unless you want to spend a week as a tucktway, Ty Lee, and learn firsthand what I'm talking about. Ming was a good tuck for about 7 hours, until she passed out. I got to say she had the tightest face I'd ever tucked before, said Naruto. Ty Lee and Azula blushed at how forward he was about what he had done to Ming, who was still recovering in the servant quarters on the ship. Azula shook her head. You're quite interesting, Naruto, said Azula with a smile. You have no idea, Azula, said Naruto. Alice. Azula and Naruto stood outside the chambers of the Fire Lord. Azula had explained that once he was within 30 paces of the Fire Lord he was to bow. Any question asked was to be answered with nothing but the truth, as the Fire Lord had little patience. The last thing Naruto had to remember was that the Fire Lord was never to be disrespected in his own home. The doors opened as they both walked into the room and stopped at the designated spot. Azula bowed and Naruto followed suit, if only to amuse his mistress. Naruto looked at the Fire Lord and was strangely reminded of Danzo in a way. The Fire Lord appeared to look about 40 to 45, long black hair, a long soul patch, narrowed amber eyes, wearing a red robe that screamed nobility. Father, said Azula in a high tone of voice that she didn't use previously. I looked at Azula and then her companion. Where have you been and why have you brought this peasant before me? Said Ozai. Naruto frowned at this. He didn't like being talked down to. Before he could retaunt, Azula stepped in. He is far from a peasant, father. He is actually a prince of an ants and firebending style that we do not have, said Azula. Ozai raised an eyebrow at this. Really, Azula? Where did you find such an interesting creature? Asked Ozai. Azula tensed and it was noticed by both Naruto and Ozai. Azula was a master of deception and could tell when she was being lied to. She couldn't lie to her father. Naruto rose and placed a hand on Azula's shoulder. Mistress Azula, please leave, said Naruto. Azula looked at Naruto in shock. What? Asked Azula. Naruto looked at Ozai. I need to have a word with Lord Ozai in private, said Naruto. Azula stood up and slowly walked out of the room, closing the door behind her. As the doors closed, Ozai prepared to lay into Naruto for giving orders in his chambers when he found himself pinned to the wall by a powerful arm. Let me go. I command you. Yelled Ozai, breathing fire out of his nose. Naruto raised his left hand and allowed the black flames to come to life. Let's get one thing straight, Ozai. I don't work for you, I work for Azula. I am her bodyguard and her most powerful weapon. Should you try and force her to relinquish control to you, I will kill you, said Naruto, letting him fall to the ground. You dare, started Ozai. Naruto snorted. Of course I dare. Should Azula give the command, I would rise the palace to the ground in a heartbeat. Also, Ozai, a fair warning. Your days as Fire Lord are numbered. All Azula has to do is utter the command and I will destroy you, but for now I am content with working with you, said Naruto, turning on his heel and heading to the door, but stopping for a second. Oh, one last thing, don't send anyone after me, because if you do I'll kill them and then I'll come after you. And for people like you I take my time killing. Having the mistress of tea and I as a former lover had its benefits, finished Naruto with a chuckle. Ozai straightened his robes and sat down in his dignified position. He reached for his cup of tea with a shaking hand and slowly drank. Ozai realized one thing that even he couldn't turn a blind eye to. The Four Nations was in for a great change. With Azula. Azula lay in a bubble bath with her hair down and Ty Lee behind her giving her hair a good wash. It was rare that Azula got to take baths such as this. Normally she was busy with her duties, such as attending to military matters such as the Earth Rebels, meeting the sons of noble families who hoped to become members of the royal family, as well as several other things. Azula, your hair is so pretty. It reminds me of the night sky, said Ty Lee. Azula smiled and pulled Ty Lee into the water slowly. Thank you, Ty Lee, and I must say you have one of the best bodies I've ever had the pleasure of having, said Azula, kissing Ty Lee. Hottest thing I've seen in a long time. Damn, that gets a guy hard. Came Naruto's voice from next to the window. Ty Lee jumped and Azula sent a blue fireball at Naruto. Naruto raised his hand and stopped the fire before crushing it in his hands. "That's not nice, Mistress Azula," said Naruto. Azula shrugged and sank back into the water and grabbed Ty Lee around her waist. "Sorry. It's reflex as a result of my training," said Azula. Naruto nodded. "Understandable. What now?" asked Naruto. Azula got out of the water and walked over to a rope, all the while knowing Naruto was staring at her shapely ass. She slipped the rope on and tied it loosely. "Most likely my father will send us after the Avatar and to probably kill or capture my older brother Zuko and my uncle," said Azula. Naruto raised a brow at this. "Avatar? Who is the Avatar?" Ty Lee looked at Naruto in a strange way that wasn't so Ty Lee-like. The Avatar is the bridge between the spirit realm and the mortal realm. When an Avatar dies, it is reincarnated into a cycle. Water, earth, fire, air. The Avatar is the only known being in the world that can master all the elements. Naruto snorted. "Big tucking deal. He sounds like a one-up ninja from my time. I can use bend all the elements," said Naruto. Azula looked at Naruto with interest. "Really? That would be something in itself, but never mind that, now we have to prepare to move out in about a day," said Azula, walking towards the door. Ty Lee got out of the water and grabbed her clothes and dressed. Naruto and Ty Lee followed Azula out of the bathing halls and towards her room. "Where are we going, Mistress Azula?" asked Naruto. Azula smiled. "To recruit the last member of my team," said Azula. A week later. The end of the week found Team Azula at the doors of New Oz-I. At least until an explosion could be seen. Azula narrowed her eyes. Her mind quickly going though the calculations. "Ty Lee with me. We're going into the west. Naruto head in from the east and cut off any who try to stop us," said Azula. Naruto nodded and vanished in a vortex of fire. Ty Lee smiled. "That would have been a cool trick in the circus," said Ty Lee. Azula glanced at her lover. "Ty Lee dear, focus is the key word and I need out focused," said Azula. Ty Lee nodded as they took off at a dead-even sprint and towards the city. But Naruto. Naruto was creeping among the roof when he saw what was most likely the cause of the disturbance. Naruto snorted. "Three brats are making all this ruckus. Then again, I destroyed an entire army of golems by the time I was 15. Naruto zeroed in on the three and tried to determination their threat level. The first was the oldest boy. He looked around 17-18s, light blue eyes, tan skin, dark brown hair that was shaved on the sides, and had a tail on the top that fell to his lower neck. He wasn't very tall, maybe about 5'10", he wore a blue top that was missing the sleeves, black pants, brown boots, tape wrapped around his arms to the elbow, fingerless black gloves, and a bone necklace. He looked like the type of guy Naruto could only hang out with if he was playing a joke. All in all, he wasn't strong enough to get a blip on the radar unless he became a master swordsman or something. Next was probably the second most beautiful girl he'd seen since waking up, since Azula had her beat by 100 miles. She looked to be 15-16s, bright blue eyes, long brown hair, standing at 5'4" with impressive figure that Naruto would love to take to his bed, with large B, small cup wrists, long brown hair pulled into a braid, and twin loops on the front of her head and towards the sides. She wore a blue dress version of what her brother wore, except it had short sleeves and fell to just past her knees, with the sides open, giving her room to move her legs, dark blue pants and small brown shoes. Around her neck was a necklace. She appeared to be a waterbender, and even though she didn't look it, she was probably the most ruthless one in their group and ranked a threat on his radar if he wasn't careful. She was almost the opposite of Azula. Naruto got a grin on his face. An image of breaking this powerful woman and making her his plate in his head. Oh yes, he loved breaking fishes like her. Hanabi was a prime example of that. Last was a boy who could pass for about 13-14s with the way he looked. The kid was bald with an arrow tattoo on his head and going down his neck as well as arrows on the back of his hands. He had brown eyes and stood at 5'5". He wore a yellow monk's robe with pants and a collared cape. In his hand was a staff as he brought down many of the soldiers with what appeared to be gusts of air from his staff. After that he turned and blasted another solider with a geyser of water. So this must be the Avatar. Not much, but if anything I've heard or read about in the scrolls says anything, then he is the most dangerous and could kill me if I'm not careful, thought Naruto. Naruto saw Tail Boy throw his boomerang and hit a group of 5 soldiers before one charged at him with a spear. The boy flipped the solider and took the weapon before he started to deal damage to the soldiers. Okay, maybe Naruto was a little too quick to dismiss the young man's skills, but he still wasn't a threat that needed immediate attention. Naruto stood and was about to join in the battle when a knife flew at the young water woman. The water woman made a shield of ice stopping the knives. Naruto was surprised because it came from directly behind him. He turned around and saw Azula and Ty Lee with another girl. She was tall, fairly taller than Azula and Ty Lee, maybe about 5'7" with B-cup wrists if what Naruto was seeing was any indication, angular face that radiated beauty with dark uncaring eyes, long black hair with 2 buns and 2 long tails left undone. She wore the female's version of what Naruto wore, except with loose sleeves and black fingerless gloves. What kept you, Mistress Azula? I was just about to join the fight. Mistress Azula? Asked the water boy. Ty Lee looked at him. He's cute. Can I keep him? Asked Ty Lee. Not now, Ty Lee. We have business to attend to, said Azula. As she jumped down followed by Naruto, Ty Lee and the other girl. Allow me to introduce myself and my team. I'm Princess Azula. This is Ty Lee, my personal bodyguard Naruto, said Azula pointing to each. The water boy's eyes widened. Guys, we need to go, said the water boy. The young boy looked at his friend. Why Sokka? Asked Baldy. Sokka looked at the boy. Azula is said to be the most ruthless and cunning fighter in the Fire Nation. Dubbed a firebending prodigy, she is said to have destroyed an entire village to flush out some rebels. Azula smiled. Please stop, you're making me blush, said Azula putting her hands to her cheeks. The water girl seemed to get pissed. Don't you dare mock my bother, you firebending fish, yelled the water girl throwing a water whip at Azula. Azula ducked to the side and charged at the water girl. Before sliding and kicking her forward. Katara, yelled the Avatar and Sokka. Ty Lee, take the water present. Naruto, deal with the Avatar. Naruto smirked before removing his vest. With pleasure, yelled Naruto shooting a fireball from his foot at the Avatar. Hang on, said Sokka, only to block a shrunken. Your fight is with us, remember? Asked Ty Lee ran forward and threw out a few jabs, but Sokka easily avoided them before dealing his machete and club. With Azula and Katara. Katara cartwheeled out of the way of a high fire arc kick before countering with a water jet using the fountain as her chose weapon. Azula punched out using a stream of fire, turning the water to steam. Katara seized the moment and turned those to ice daggers before shooting them at Azula. Azula ducked to the side as her hairpiece was caught, allowing her hair to flow free. Azula growled before charging forward and throwing a punch at Katara. Katara blocked with her left arm before doing a sweeping kick at Azula. Azula flipped backwards. Azula landed on a roof and unleashed a wave of fireballs at Katara. Katara brought water in front of her, making a water wall blocking all the fireballs. Katara did a quick circle and made a twisting tower of ice that she used to charge at Azula. Azula jumped into the air and opened her mouth before unleashing a blue blast of fire. Katara's eyes widened before she surrounded herself in a water ball. The fire connected and exploded on impact, sending Katara flying into a wall. Katara let out a yell of pain, feeling her shoulder dislocate. Azula walked before her and leaned down. That was quite intense. I'm actually inclined to say that it made me rather bothered by how strong you are, said Azula only to smirk. Despite that, you'd make a good pet and Naruto has expressed interest in you, finished Azula touching Katara's face. Katara flinched away. Don't you dare touch me, said Katara with a hard glare in her eyes, turning them to ice. Azula smirked. We have a little time before your boy toy and pathetic brother are beaten. I say we play, said Azula backhanding Katara. Katara hit the ground hard. Katara tired to get up only to get kicked in the stomach and flipped over. Azula opened her shirt and superheated her right index finger, and right above Katara's right wrist cut into her skin, while sealing it with the heat. Katara screamed in pain as Azula finished and admired her work. On Katara's chest was the Fire Nation seal with an A in the center. Azula sat on Katara's stomach and grabbed her face. One day soon I'm going to own you, little water tribe girl. And if you play right, the Avatar need not die, said Azula kissing Katara. But Sokka, and Ty Lee. Sokka batted a knife away as he heard his sister scream. He looked over and was horrified. His sister was being hurt. Normally his sister could handle herself, but she had never faced a firebender of this magnitude. Katara, hang on, yelled Sokka, charged at Azula. Ty Lee landed in front of him and jabbed him in his right arm. Sokka dropped his club as a senbon went into his left leg, making him fall to his knees. It's a really bad idea to interfere with Azula when she's having fun, said Ty Lee looked at her mistress and smiled. She looks like she's having a blast with the girl, said Ty Lee. But Naruto and Aang was confused as the man before him was not only holding his own against Aang, but was using airbending to do it. Aang did a side flip and blasted a wind ball at Naruto. Naruto jumped over it and fired a wind blast from his mouth. The blast caught Aang in the chest and sent him into a wall. Aang jumped up and did an air blast. Naruto did a spinning flip and landed before Aang. Naruto pulled out a long knife and slashed Aang across his chest. Aang jumped back holding his chest as his blood began to flow freely. Naruto threw the knife into the air and caught it in a reverse grip. Aang looked at his fellow airbender with an intense look. Why are you helping these people? They started a war by destroying our people. If anything, you should be helping me end this senseless war. That is the air nomad way, yelled Aang. Naruto frowned at the younger boy. You got a lot of gull to say that, kid. First of all, I've been asleep for a long time. Second, Azula woke me up and freed me from my prison. Third, I wasn't a damned monk. I'm a tucking assassin. I kill for a living. And I have orders from Azula to kill you," said Naruto. Aang growled and made an air slash to shot at Naruto, but Naruto appeared before Aang and punched him in his gut. Aang fell onto the ground holding his stomach in pain. Weak. Weak, weak, weak. All those stories about the great and powerful Avatar, and I find you're just a kid with a really big chip on his shoulders. You're nothing compared to me. I think I'll kill you now and see if Azula is done playing with that little water tribe slut," said Naruto, knowing how to get under someone's skin if need be. Aang's head shot up. "What did you say?" asked Aang. Naruto ignored him. "I better beep as tight. She looked and even smelled like a virgin. Did you know all virgins smell like snow? And that girl Katara, I think her name was. She smells like the freshest and purest snow I've ever smelled. Even more so than the land of snow," said Naruto. Aang glared at Naruto before punching the air, sending a powerful wave at Naruto. The wave hit Naruto, sending him skidding backward some ways. Aang capitalized on this and charged forward before launching a powerful kick at Naruto. Naruto looked at the kick and caught the leg before swinging Aang around and slamming him into the ground hard. Naruto let Aang go as he slowly stood up. Naruto gathered chakra to his arm and quickly spun around, hitting Aang with his teacher Killer Bee's signature move, the lariat, hitting Aang across the throat. Aang rocketed across the ground and landed hard. Aang gasped as he tried to sit up and spat up blood as Naruto kicked him again in his stomach and sent him flying. "This is getting real tucking fast," said Naruto, preparing to finish this. Only to jump back as a blast of fire nearly hit him. Naruto looked at Aang and saw that he was glowing white with his eyes and tattoos white. Naruto whistled before the ground under him split open and a blast of steam hit him. "You will not hurt Katara," yelled Aang. Naruto jumped away from a earth pillar and made two shadow clones who both quickly vanished and grabbed Ty Lee and Mai. "What's going on?" asked Mai. Naruto looked at Aang with an interested look. "We're leaving. Get Azula," said Naruto as the clones jumped out of the way of a supercharged wind punch. "Why?" asked Ty Lee. Naruto looked at Aang. "Because the way is now, I'd have to kill him. Azula's plans require that he live," said Naruto, already knowing what the princess had planned. Azula stood on the platform with rage clear in her eyes. Naruto sat off on the rail eating a plum. Ty Lee and Mai also sat off to the side as they knew Azula was in no mood for anything other than causing pain and humiliation, as the captain of the ship they would be using found out earlier that day by telling her the tides wouldn't allow them to leave the port for at least a day. "We had the Avatar. We had him," yelled Azula, kicking a servant who was attending to her hair. "And yet he still managed to escape or grasp." Naruto took another bite of his plum. "Calm down, Azula. It wasn't the right time. When the time is right, he won't escape no matter what," said Naruto, throwing what was left of his plum away. Azula glared at Naruto and was about to blow a stream of fire at him when a bird landed in the window. Mai walked over to it and picked it up. She raised an eyebrow. "It's for you, Azula," said Mai, tossing the scroll to Azula. Azula snatched it out of the air and looked at it. "It appears we have to meet up with a small army in the south and put down a rebel faction of Earth soldiers and Earthbenders," said Azula, burning the scroll. Naruto smiled at this. "So we're going to go and see some action, huh?" asked Naruto. Azula smiled back at her bodyguard in a sinister way. "Yes, my dear Naruto. We are going to see some action rather soon. We're meeting with our transport in a little over a day. We are to meet with General Lu Tan at the south. He needs out help with something," said Azula. "With Katara." It had been nearly 3 days since Katara had been branded by Azula, and yet she found herself unable to sleep, and every time she closed her eyes, she could hear her words as if as clear as day. Dark circles graced the underside of her eyes from lack of sleep. She needed to talk to someone. Katara got up and walked over to her brother's tent. She pushed it open. She walked over to her brother and gently shook him awake. Sokka awakened, yawned. His warrior's tail was undone and he looked at Katara. "Katara, what is it?" asked a groggy Sokka, looking at his sister. Katara bit her lip. This was a lot more difficult than she thought. She had always been able to tell Sokka everything, her fears of never being married, her hopes of becoming a master waterbender and a good mother, and her dream to help her brother become the strong noble warrior chief she knew he was destined to become. "Sokka, you know I haven't been sleeping well, right?" asked Katara. When Sokka nodded his head, she went on. "When I fought Azula, she told me that I would become her pet, her slave. Sokka, I'm scared, and that creature she had with her doesn't ease my mind in the least. He was able to fight Aang and nearly kill him. Sokka, I fear we're going to fail," said Katara as tears began to stream down her face. Sokka put his hands on Katara's shoulders. "Katara, I understand your worries and I get it. The day Dad and the warriors left, I was scared of failing him, as Dad left me as the acting chief of the entire village. Like that day I nearly lost you to that wolf bear when I was 12. You were injured and it was my job to not only protect the village, but you. I feared that you were dead, but then do you remember what you told me? Asked Sokka. Katara nodded and gave a sad smile. The same one she had that day as a little girl. I remember it all too well. It was don't be sad Sokka. If I die then the spirits are with me and if I live then the spirits have blessed me. Why ask me about something that happened so long ago Sokka? Asked Katara. Sokka smiled and grabbed his sister's small hands in his much larger ones. Because Katara I thank the spirits every day that you're alive because you're not just my little sister. You're my best friend. And I swear on my honor as a water tribe warrior, I'll do everything in my power to protect you, said Sokka. Katara began to cry and throw herself at her brother, giving him a massive hug. Sokka smiled at Katara and returned the hug. Thank you Sokka. I have one more question, said Katara. What is it? Asked Sokka looking at Katara with a questioning gaze. Katara blushed a little bit. Can I sleep here tonight, like we used to when we were younger? Asked Katara. Looking away from Sokka out of embarrassment. Sokka smiled and nodded. Sure, but only for tonight. I don't want your boyfriend to get mad at me, said Sokka getting a laugh at his sister. Katara blushed before smacking Sokka on his arm lightly. Aang is not my boyfriend, said Katara. But Naruto. Naruto woke slowly from a sound sleep inside of his room on the small ship with the two handmaidens in his bed being out of it from the pleasure that they received last night from Azula's bodyguard. Naruto got up and yawned looking at the two of them. They were sweet, but he wanted a much more tantalizing fruit in the name of Azula, Ty Lee, and Mai. Naruto grabbed his pants and wrapped tape around from the knees to his ankles, pulled on his black boots and a red vest that he closed it off with a black sash and pulled on some black fingerless gloves. He walked out of his room and towards the deck when he stopped at Azula's room. He opened the door and peered inside the room to see a naked Azula with an equally naked Ty Lee on top of her. One thing Naruto had to admit is that Ty Lee had one hell of an ass. Naruto closed the door and made his way to the deck only to stop as he heard a moan of pure pleasure. It sounded like it was coming from the direction of Mai's room. Naruto turned and made his way to Mai's room. He opened the door and was surprised by what he saw. Naruto looked at Mai with a grin on his face. Good for a virgin, but I think we can do better, said Naruto getting off the bed. Mai lay on her bed panting and looking at Naruto as he grabbed his pants and sash when a knock sounded on the door. Mai cleaned her face quickly and wrapped the covers around her nude body. Enter, said Mai. The guard entered the room and looked at them. He was positive that something had happened. His eyes fell on Mai and he gained a bit of a lust-filled look that Naruto easily caught. Naruto growled as his eyes turned red. Naruto may not have shown it often, but he was very protective of what he considered his, and since he took Mai's virginity, he considered her one of his mates. To have a lowly guard look at her in such a way pissed him off. Naruto did a stepping snap kick that laughed a black fireball and sent the guard flying into the wall. If you ever look at Mai like that again I'll crush your bones and feed you to my pet foe, said Naruto. The guard nodded before Naruto found Mai next to him with a calming hand. Speak before you find out just how strong my betrothed is, said Mai. Naruto frowned and looked as the guard soiled himself with piss and shit. Commander Naruto, Lady Mai, Princess Azula requests your presence in the war room. We will be meeting with the good general in 20 minutes, said the guard. Mai nodded and led Naruto back into the room. Naruto raised an eyebrow. Betrothed? Asked Naruto. Mai smiled in a way that just made her radiate beauty. To scare the guard. He's looked at me like that before, said Mai. Naruto nodded. But what about that ranking? Commander he called me, said Naruto. Mai nodded and pulled on her clothes. Yes. Officially you're listed as a commander. As Azula's bodyguard or you could be called a major. Depending on if we're with the navy or army, said Mai. Naruto nodded. We'd better not keep our lovely princess waiting, said Naruto. On deck. Azula sat on her throne with Ty Lee at her side as Mai and Naruto walked onto deck. She raised an eyebrow as she saw Naruto's arm wrapped around her waist. She felt something in the pit of her stomach drop at the sight of one of her best friends wrapped around the finger of her new bodyguard. Azula had an idea of what happened but didn't want to say anything because this meeting was too important to let petty emotions get in the way. You two can play later, the good general will be here shortly, said Azula in her no-nonsense tone of voice. Mai took a step away from Naruto and up to Azula's right side where she awaited Naruto himself stood before them and slightly offset in case Lu Tan tired anything. It wasn't long before a ship about the size of Azula's pulled up to them. A bridge was set on both ships before a man and 5 guards walked across. The man was easily in his late 20s, a chin bread that was braided, brown hair that was in a top knot, and wearing the traditional Fire Nation armor with a cape. The general smiled at Azula before bowing. My princess. It is good to see you, said Lu Tan. Before Azula had a chance to talk, Naruto appeared before him and hit him in his chest with a strong punch that broke his armor and sent him flying. Lu Tan rolled into a fighting position and looked at Naruto. What in the name of Ozai? Yelled Lu Tan as his guards prepared to fire. Naruto stared them down. We are here on business. Speak your well, but do not presume to be on her level, said Naruto. Lu Tan sneered at Naruto. Who in the devil do you think you are? I should have you executed, said Lu Tan. A most unwise choice if you think you can beat my bodyguard and commander of my task force, said Azula in a clear tone that dared the general to make a move on her bodyguard. The general gulped at the stare Azula was giving him. Forgive me, princess, said Lu Tan, bowing low to the princess of the Fire Nation. Azula sat back as if bored with the whole thing. It's fine, but don't make the same mistake again, said Azula. Lu Tan nodded and pulled a map from one of his subordinates. He opened it and the plans for battle began. Shylon Village. An army of 500 Earth Infantry soldiers and 150 Earthbenders stood at the gates of the fifth largest city in the Southern Earth Kingdom. Commander Lo Mang was leading the defense. He was an Earthbender that was very strong and used a warhammer in battle. Sir. Army approaching from the north. Yelled the North lookout. Lo Mang made an earth tower and rose until he was at the height of the lookout and took the scope. He looked out and saw not an army, more like 150 infantry and about 40 tundra tanks. Lo Mang frowned at this. Such a small number, what do they hope to do? Asked Lo Mang as a man and woman came close, both wearing Fire Nation armor, with the only difference being that the woman had loose sleeves and the male had no sleeves. Both rode atop what appeared to be two tri-horned wolves. Lo Mang jumped down and used Quicksand Earth Wave to greet them halfway on the battlefield. He jumped off and landed looking at them from 10 feet away, close enough to attack and be attacked should this meeting not go according to plan. I am Commander Lo Mang. Commander of the Southern Defense Army of the Earth Kingdom, said Lo Mang. The black-haired girl bowed. I am Mai. The voice of Princess Azula in this. The man next to me is Commander Naruto. He is acting as my counsel and bodyguard, said Mai, dismounting and stepping slightly closer. Lo Mang nodded as he saw that the boy was most likely a firebender with a warrior's background, if the Jan was anything to go off of. So what is it that you and your wish, Lady Mai? Asked Lo Mang. The unconditional surrender of you, your troops, and Shylon Village, said Naruto in a neutral voice. Lo Mang raised a brow at this. Surely you and the girl jest. I have a superior force as well as the Havens themselves smiling down on me on this fine day, said Lo Mang. Mai crossed her arms. Then you are a fool for thinking that. The heavens don't always smile down upon you, said Mai. Lo Mang glared at her. Perhaps, but the only thing a Fire Nation force should be doing is laying on her back for my solders, said Lo Mang, hoping to provoke her. Mai's frown deepened. Please excuse this for what she is about to do then. Yelled Mai as she pulled out a blade as was about to attack. Naruto grabbed Mai's wrist firmly in order to stop her. Don't sully your hands, Mai. No need when all he is doing is beaching himself closer to death with each second, said Naruto before wrapping her in a hug and leading her to the tri-horned wolves. He sat on one and pulled her behind him. Mai glared at the commander. You have 24 hours to surrender or we burn the village to the ground, said Mai as Naruto snapped the reins before taking off. Naruto smirked. That went about as expected. I thought all commanders were more civilized than that, said Naruto as they pulled up to the army as they set up camp. Mai smiled as they dismounted and led Naruto to her tent. Azula, Ty Lee and the good general should be ready in just 12 hours. In the meantime I'd like to have you to myself, said Mai, kissing Naruto on the lips and grabbing the arms of his sleeves. With Azula, Ty Lee, and General Lu Tan. Azula slowly moved to the rather large group of elite firebenders that they had planned to use for the attack. While Mai and Naruto lead a diversion force, Azula would use the back door. Or make one and lay waste to the village. Either way, a force of 200 firebenders would do the job. Azula held up her hand signaling the stop of the army. They were a good 2 miles outside the target zone. It would take 30 minutes to attack, but with the battle starting at noon sharp and Azula's group moving in 15 minutes before the battle, that left a lot to chance. Like if Naruto and Mai could hold the line for that long. She pushed the thoughts aside. With Mai's tactical mind and Naruto's power, it would be easy enough to hold if not weaken the lines. Ty Lee walked over to Azula and handed her a water pouch. You should drink something, Azula. Your aura is running wild. Said Ty Lee, sitting next to her friend. Azula accepted the water pouch and took a drink. Thank you, Ty Lee, said Azula, looking at her friend and lover. Azula couldn't keep her eyes off of her. Ty Lee wore a long black jacket with built-in armor under it, best of all it didn't hinder movement and was fairly lightweight. Not to mention Azula could only image what kinds of things she would do to a naked Ty Lee under that. How long do we have to travel with these fools? Asked Ty Lee, wishing she was with Naruto as a few men glanced at her body. Only for a few hours at most. Once this is over I'm frying that damn general, said Azula, making Ty Lee smile. A few hours later. Naruto stood less than 200 meters from the city. "Common sir, this is your last chase to give up," yelled Naruto as the tundra tanks lined up ready to fire. They had a deadly effective range of up to 300 yards. "Never you Fire Nation dog," yelled Commander Lo Mang. Naruto frowned. He hated being called a dog. He was once a dog serving his loyal masters in the village of Konoha, but no longer, not after so many years. He did have a master, Azula, but he wasn't her dog. No, far from it. Naruto breathed, making a tower of black fire that nearly reached the high walls of the city. "Move the tanks back," said Naruto with cold fury in his voice. "Move them back," yelled a lieutenant. Naruto got into the traditional fire-bending stance and shot his arm out, but instead of fire, a bolt of red lightning shot out. Everyone on both sides was shocked at how wide the lightning bolt was and surprised because lightning bending needed time and specific stance to even generate the power. Only Fire Lord Ozai and General Iroh were known to do it in milliseconds, and here was the bodyguard of the princess, the fire-bending prodigy, who was said to have the strongest lightning attack, and this was done with just a punch. The lightning arced and struck the west section of the wall and blowing the upper half to pieces and sending men flying dead, near dead, or in great pain. Mai looked at the display in wonder before she looked at the commanding officer. "What are you waiting for? Give the order to move in and attack. Tundra tanks move in. Firebenders fall in behind. Infantry move off to the sides and watch for earth strikes," yelled the commander. The soldiers did as instructed. The tundra tanks formed a V formation, with 5 soldiers falling in behind each of them. Mai lined up with Naruto as earthbenders began to throw rocks and other such things. Mai pulled out a pocket watch and looked at it. "We have 15 minutes until Azula begins her attack from the rear wall," said Mai in a bored tone. Naruto smirked. "If that's the case, then I'm going to go have a talk with the good commander," said Naruto. Jumping into the air and using jet propulsion to fly to the wall while cutting, blasting all rocks thrown at him. Mai smiled. "Show off," said Mai, snapping the reins as she began to throw her stilettos and knives, killing all the soldiers she could with her hawk-like accuracy. But Azula and Ty Lee. Azula heard the boom and knew that Naruto had signaled the attack to begin. They moved as quickly as they could. More explosions and soon fire could be seen. The first part of the plan was working, now it was time for the second part of the plan. "General, take a team of 50 around to the east wall," said Azula. General Lu Tan nodded and motioned for 50 to follow, which they did. Small alterations of this sort were the norm in battle. They charged ahead for another 10 minutes before coming to the wall with no guards. Azula smiled. "Oh, how the spirits have blessed me this day," said Azula, doing the motions for her most powerful attack. With Lo Mang. Lo Mang was starting to get pissed. Not only did the Fire Nation manage to breach their walls, but they were losing too many men too quickly for his tastes. The culprits who were doing the most damage were the firebender who bended red lighting and black fire, and a girl who could hit any target it seemed. Lo Mang was about to order the east to be abandoned and refocusing on the battle to the north when 2 explosions happened in both those parts. Lo Mang looked at the lieutenant for answers. "What is happening?" he yelled. "Sir, 50 elite firebenders have breached the east led by Lu Tan, while the south was hit by 50 benders led by Princess Azula." Lo Mang paled at this. He was dealing with the Angel of Blue Flames, this mysterious commander, and General Lo Mang. No way was he to win this. "Abandon the city," yelled Lo Mang. "What about the people?" asked the lieutenant. "Forget the people. Our job is to warn the Council of Five. This war just fell into the favor of the Fire Nation." The lieutenant sighed and was about to issue the order when a black ball of fire hit him in the chest, sending him flying into the wall, dead. Lo Mang turned and looked at Naruto, who was standing not 20 feet away. Naruto gave him a smile. "Did you really think I was going to let you go after you called Maya for commander?" asked Naruto, crossing his arms. Lo Mang growled at Naruto and stomped on the ground, making 2 walls appear in front of and behind Naruto. Clapping his hands, the 2 walls smashed into Naruto, only to be blown apart by an explosion of black flames. Naruto stood there for a second before charging at Lo Mang. Lo Mang removed his warhammer and charged at Naruto. In the city. Infantry fought in the streets. Mai moved along at a slow pace, dispatching those who thought they had escaped death. She finally found an earthbender who glared at her. "You killed my brother, you heartless Fire Nation fish," yelled the man. Mai looked at him. "If I didn't kill him, someone would have, besides you and your little Earth Kingdom army are shit compared to the #1 firebender," said Mai, thinking of Naruto. "Shut your mouth for," yelled the man, stomping the ground, making a fissure. The fissure opened the ground and Mai found her leg trapped in it. He then brought a boulder up and was about to fire when a strike of pink dashed by her and hit the man in the neck. The man choked and dropped to the ground dead. Mai looked at the pink blur. "What took you so long to get here, Ty Lee?" asked Mai. Ty Lee smiled at the dark girl. "I ran into a few benders," said Ty Lee, doing a cartwheel. Ty Lee and Mai got back to back as a number of soldiers surrounded them. Mai pulled out two throwing knives as Ty Lee got into her heavy stance. "This is going to be a cakewalk," said Ty Lee smiling. "Maybe I'll have a bit of fun," said Mai throwing a knife and nailing a solider in between his eyes. With Azula. Azula ran though the city dispatching earthbenders that got in her way. She stopped jumping onto a nearby wall and kicking off before launching her signature blue flames at the benders, blasting them back. She landed in a perfect crouching position before kicking back and doing a windmill kick, unleashing a vortex of blue flames that blasted back a few soldiers into nearby building and killing some of them. She righted herself and looked around for anything else. A lieutenant ran up to her and keeled. "What is it?" asked Azula, blasting a small fireball at a bender. "The south and east parts of the city have fallen, and resistance in the west is in the process of falling," said the Solider. "And Commander Naruto?" asked Azula with a bit of worry in her voice for her bodyguard. Before the lieutenant could answer, a body landed before her. It was Lo Mang, almost a smoking corpse. He was alive, but only just. "How he made General I'll never know," said Naruto. Landed next to Naruto. Azula's eyes shone as she saw Naruto unharmed, but had to keep up appearances. "Report, Commander," said Azula. Naruto snorted and kicked Lo Mang. "This piece of shit here thought he had all the power he needed to beat me, but it took me less than 5 minutes to dispatch him. What a fool he was," said Naruto. Azula nodded as Mai, Ty Lee, and Lu Tan appeared. Lu Tan bowed using his hands and looked at Azula. "Princess, the city has fallen. What do you wish done with it?" asked Lu Tan. Azula took a seat. On a broken piece of rubble that resembled a throne. Naruto smirked. "Get everyone out of the city," said Naruto as he turned and began to walk away. Mai raised an eyebrow. "Why is that?" asked Mai. Naruto smirked. "A dragon is most dangerous when awoken," said Naruto. Ty Lee backed away. "Azula, we need to go," said Ty Lee in pure fear. Azula looked at her. "Why, Ty Lee?" "His aura just turned pure black with a white flame surrounding it," said Ty Lee. Azula's eyes widened. "Get the order out. Abandon the city now," yelled Azula. 5 minutes later. The city was fully abandoned with women, children, and non-Sodders being taken prisoners as Naruto appeared next to Azula via black flame. Azula looked at Naruto as Naruto gave a smirk. "You're going to love this, my lady Azula," said Naruto, snapping his fingers. An explosion was heard throughout the valley as a large flaming dragon shot into the air before bursting and raining down black flames all over the village. Many soldiers and prisoners looked on in fear, awe, and respect for his power. "I. He is the most powerful firebender I have ever seen," came the voice of a Fire Nation lieutenant. Lu Tan looked at this lieutenant and agreed. "Then pray to an eye that he never becomes our enemy," said Lu Tan as Azula gave a smirk that would have made her father shiver in pain as she was in control of this creature, this human in demon form. Team Azula had left Lu Tan in charge of cleanup of the former great city as they had to return to chasing the Avatar. They were currently travailing by means of the tank train. The most powerful armored vehicle in the Fire Nation army right now. Naruto looked at a map as Lo and Lee drove the train. Naruto looked at the girls and was giving them all looks. Azula was currently mediating. Ty Lee was bending in several odd ways, and Mai was playing with her custom kunai knives that Naruto had given her. They were a lot like his father's kunai, the only difference is that the twin points on the side were rounded off and down, making them closer to small razors. "Having fun, Mai?" asked Naruto, putting down his map. Mai looked at Naruto. "Broad as hell," said Mai, sighing. Naruto smirked before grabbing Mai and pulling her into a deep kiss. Mai moaned and closed her eyes before dropping her knives. Naruto pulled back and smirked. "Maybe I can help you get rid of all that boredom," said Naruto in a husky voice that had Mai weak at the knees. "Now is not the time for such things," said Lo, pulling a lever and bringing the train to a stop. Azula opened her eyes and looked at her wise men. "Why have we stopped?" asked Azula. "The trail, it would seem," said Lee. Ty Lee opened the hatch and was the first one out with Naruto, Mai, and Azula following close behind her. Azula signaled for them to spread around the area as she examined the fur. "So it's spring already," said Naruto in a tree off to the right. Azula looked at Naruto. "What do you know of this, Naruto?" Naruto shrugged. "Nothing much. An old friend of mine was a breeder. Hana told me that dogs and other such creatures grew new coats during the spring," said Naruto. "Meaning?" asked Azula. "Meaning that for the next few days, maybe 4 or 5, we can track them by the great beast they ride," said a grinning Naruto. "With the gong." Sokka stood in the river without his shirt and pants on, leaving him in his warrior shorts. In his hand and on back were a few homemade spears that Sokka used to easily catch fish as they passed by. He had captured a good number of them. Maybe 10, and since he and Aang could both eat 3 fish with Katara and Toph, eating 1 each, that left the rest for extra. He got out of the water and grabbed his pants and was about to put them on when he heard a giggle. He looked up and saw the newest addition to their strange little family, Toph Beifong. Now Sokka wasn't one to judge, bullshit on that, but even though she was 15 and 3 years his junior, he found himself oddly attracted to the young earthbending prodigy. Toph was a beautiful girl hands down. She stood at 5'3" with toned muscles, compared to the bulky muscles like most earthbenders that Sokka disliked to some degree and B-cup freaks that fit her body nicely, long black hair that was pulled into a massive bun, pale jade eyes that were due to her little sight problem that just seemed right on her. She wore a form-fitting long-sleeved green shirt that showed her figure well, a yellow jacket dress with slits running up both sides and stopping at her hips, a pair of baggy green pants, arm bracers, ankle bracers and a green and yellow headdress keeping her hair out of her face. She was sitting on a rock chair and looking at Sokka as he dressed. "What is it, Toph?" asked Sokka, putting his sash on over his sleeveless shirt. "Nothing, but I wonder if Sugar Queen is aware that her brother is packing some really big guns. I wonder though, did she ever offer to suck that big beep of yours?" asked Toph. Sokka blushed at the thought and wanted to scream at Toph. "That's my tucking sister," growled Sokka. Toph shrugged. "It's not like everyone hasn't heard the rumors of how you wets roll," said Toph. Sokka blushed in rage. He was well aware of the rumors and disgust of the water tribes, as more than a few families were inbreed, not because of how far away they were from the rest of the world. That was what the annual new moon celebration was for, but it had not been held in almost 100 years. "I suggest you shut up, you little earth trollop," said Sokka, shaking in rage. Toph laughed and got up and walked over to Sokka and gave him a once-over. "What are you going to do? I bet I'm the only female within 100 miles that you will see besides your sister, and maybe be the only other one willing to suck your beep in the whole of the 4 nations if you act right," said Toph, sarcastically trying to rile up the young warrior. Sokka balled up his fists in rage and wanted to strike her. Suki had been the first girl he had ever been intimate with, and even though he and Yu had loved each other, they never went past kissing and holding each other in the moonlight. Sokka took a deep breath and gathered to fish. "Say what you will, Toph, but know this, you're pissing off a polar bear dog," said Sokka, dropping the fish and pushing Toph up against a tree and drawing his knife and putting it to her throat. Toph tensed up as Sokka had her pinned in a way that keep her off the ground and away from the earth. Even though she could fight with how close they were, the slightest mistake on her part would be the end of her life. Toph frowned and looked Sokka dead in the eye. "What are you going to do now? Rape me? Kill me? Beat the hell out of me until I learn my lesson?" asked Toph. She may have been blind, but she was not foolish to the ways of the world, as her family owned a few slaves, and she knew the things her father do to the female slaves. And despite how brave she was acting, she truly feared what the Water Tribe warrior would do to her. Sokka frowned. "No. I'm not a barbarian that the stories portray my people to be, Toph. I never have been and never will be, but you need to learn that a dragon might be able to kill a twin-headed pit viper, but the viper's poison will kill the dragon in the end," said Sokka, dropping her and getting the fish. Toph growled, but didn't want to fight currently. "What the tuck do you mean, Sokka?" asked Toph. Sokka stopped and looked at her. "Become part of the dragon or become the poison that kills us, Toph. It's your call." 24 hours later. Naruto smirked as the tank chased after the Avatar and his team. The tank kept after them and was keeping the team off balance, and he knew from experience that the time was about to basically tear itself apart. It was in the middle of the night currently, and Naruto was manning the controls alone. Azula wanted to wait until noon to attack, but Naruto was itching for a fight as it was. He wanted another shot at the Avatar. Naruto was so into his own world that he almost didn't notice the shadow behind him, only years of combat and honed reflexes trained into his body made him remove his knife and hold it to the person's throat as he shoved them into the bulkhead, making their head bounce. "Ah." Naruto looked as Azula stared at him in slight fright. Naruto sighed. "It's only you, Azula," said Naruto, putting the knife back into his pouch. Azula grabbed her neck where it was already starting to bruise from the assault. "How did you know I was here?" "I was as quiet as a ash cat," asked Azula. Naruto looked at her. "Years of practice. That and your scent gave you away. You smell of sweet berries, heated ash, and fire flowers," said Naruto, not bothering to look at her body and her combat clothes, except her armor and her hair down. Azula blushed. "I've been meaning to ask you a few things. What is going on between you and Mai?" asked Azula, grossing her arms. Naruto read the Fire Princess's stance and realized that she was getting jealous. Sakura had the same problem when he started dating Hinata, but like then he was going to nip it in the bud. "Is it any of your business, Azula?" asked Naruto. Azula narrowed her amber eyes into slits and pushed Naruto, but it was like touching a brick wall, nothing but solid muscle. "Of course it's my business. Mai is my friend and you are my bodyguard. Whatever happens between the two of you is my problem," hissed Azula. Naruto stood up and Azula quickly realized the difference in height as well as power as he backed her into a wall and put his hands on either side of her head. He brought his face so close to hers that they were almost kissing, making Azula blush and want him to move forward just a bit more. As Naruto began speaking, his cool breath hit her lips, making her shiver in pleasure. You know what I think? I think that you want to be in Mai's shoes. I think you want me to spend more time with me, Azula-chan, said Naruto, moving to her ear and kissing it. Azula shivered, but had enough scene of mind to push Naruto away before things got too far out of hand. This is not the time to let your low lust of Naruto hurt you, thought Azula, almost crossing into a zone she didn't want to. As Azula walked past Naruto, she heard an offhanded comment. She can walk away, but sooner or later I'm waxing that fine ass, said Naruto, not realizing that he said that aloud. Azula stopped in her tracks and was torn between giving him his wish and slapping him with a fire charge slap. A loud smack was heard not a minute later. An hour later. Azula was in full battle armor, while Mai and Ty Lee were in their normal clothes. Naruto himself walked into the room wearing Fire Nation armor with no shoulder plating. On his face was a burn mark that was slowly healing. What happened to your face, Naruto? Asked Ty Lee, tilting her head. Naruto smirked. I had a little conversation with Azula is all, said Naruto as they turned to Azula, who mounted her Mungus dragon. Ty Lee and Mai mounted theirs while Naruto summoned a dragon to ride. Lo, Lee, open up the hangar door, said Azula. As the doors opened, the foursome shot out of the doors and up the side of the cliff. As they rose, they got a good look at the Avatar and his little group. They noticed that there was another girl added to the group. Boulders began to shot at them. Naruto jumped off the dragon and launched a flaming kick that destroyed the boulders with ease. Azula halted her dragon, as did Mai and Ty Lee. An earthbender? Said Naruto. And a strong one by the looks of her. This is going to be interesting. Naruto, I want you to take on the Avatar. Ty Lee, the earthbending girl is yours. Mai, take that wannabe warrior out and fast, said Azula. That leaves you with the water tribe girl, said Mai, looking at Sokka. Azula licked her lips. What can I say? I just like the exotic color of her skin, said Azula. Ty Lee gave a giggle. As fun as this is, we should nip this in the bud, said Ty Lee. I agree, said Naruto, spinning his hands and launching a fireball at the gong. A large wall appeared. Go, I'll hold them off. Yelled a voice that Naruto didn't know. Good, but not good enough. Yelled Naruto as lightning was charged to his hand and his vision narrowed. Chidori. Yelled Naruto, blowing though the wall and knocking the girl on her ass. The girl stood up and got into a non-traditional earthbending style. Naruto looked at her and realized that any move he made would most likely end up with him on his back. What's your name, little earthbender? Asked Naruto, trying to see if her defense had a weakness. Toph. Mountain name is Toph and I'm the best earthbender there is, said Toph, full of confidence. Naruto turned his back to her and spun around with a fireball in his hand that he was about to throw when he was forced to jump back as a spike nearly cut his throat. Naruto flipped onto the ledge and fired a ball of black flames that Toph stopped with a heavy earth wall. Sokka grabbed Toph's hand and made a run for Appa. What the hell are you doing? Asked Toph as Sokka picked her up bridal style, making her blush as he jumped onto Appa. Yip, yip. Yelled Katara. Sokka glared at Toph even though he knew she couldn't see. Saving your dumb ass. That guy is not a guy you want to tuck with. Yelled Sokka, pointing to Naruto. Toph narrowed her eyes in anger and looked directly at Sokka, and she looked quite intimidating. I'm a tucking bender. I can handle myself. Unlike you snozzles. Yelled Toph. Katara didn't bother looking back. He was only looking out for you. That's what we do. We watch out for each other, said Katara in her softest voice. Toph didn't bother to look at Katara. I didn't need the help. I've been watching my own back for years now, said Toph. Aang put a hand on her shoulder. That's all well and good, Toph, but we're friends and that's what friends do. We help each other out, said Aang. Toph bit her lower lip before throwing Aang's hand off her shoulder. Whatever, said Toph, turning from the group. Sokka went to checking the supplies when he heard what sounded like a small thank you from Toph. With Team Azula. Naruto frowned as he watched a large Bojin get away. They were already a good 4 to 5 miles away. Azula and the others arrived next to Naruto. Damn. I thought we had them, cursed Azula with a sneer on her face. You should really get that look off your face. You're much too pretty for it, said Naruto. What now, Naruto? Asked Ty Lee, taking a few steps towards her friend. Azula rounded on Ty Lee. I'm the one in command here, Ty Lee. My opinion should always come first. Said Azula, fire clear in her voice. Mai folded her arms. True. You are the boss here, but Naruto has more combat and tracking experience than all of us put together, said Mai. Azula could not help but agree with that logic. Fine. Start talking, Naruto. Return to the tank, said Naruto, mounting his dragon. I'll follow them and keep them unbalanced on edge. Azula looked at Naruto. And how do you plan on staying awake for so long? Asked a Fire Nation princess. Naruto smirked. I've had to go nearly 2 weeks without sleep at one point and that was after a long damn battle, so what's a day or two for me, said Naruto. But Team Avatar. Tensions were running high in the group. It had already been 2 days since the last time they got any sleep and they were starting to take it out on each other. Sokka currently sat next to Appa who had passed out from exhaustion not more than an hour ago. Sokka was still awake along with the others. Appa's exhausted, said Aang. Sokka looked at the team sleepily. Okay. We've put a lot of distance between us and them. The plan right now is to follow Appa's lead and get some sleep. Katara gave an irritated glare to Toph who was laying on the ground. Of course we could have gotten some sleep earlier if Toph didn't have such issues. The blind girl sprang up and glared at Katara. What? Asked a pissed off Toph. Aang, sensing that this could be bad, tried to clam both girls down. Okay, we're all just tired, so let's just try and get some sleep. But even the great peacekeeper couldn't stop the inevitable. No. I want to hear what Katara has to say. You think I got issues? Asked the blind girl. Sokka groaned knowing that this was about to get ugly. Especially with how stubborn the two girls were. Katara shrugged. I'm just saying. Maybe if you helped out earlier, we could have set up our camp faster and gotten sleep, started Katara before shouting at Toph, and then maybe we wouldn't be in this situation. You blaming me for this, Ujer Queen? Asked Toph on the edge of unleashing an earth wave at the girl as the pebbles around her shook. Aang felt the slight vibrations as did Sokka. No. She's not blaming you, said Aang trying once again to stop the fight that was fast approaching. Toph shoved Aang sending him into Sokka. I never asked you for diddly doo dah. Starting Toph pointing to herself. I carry my own weight. Besides, if there's anyone to blame, it's Shetty over here. Said Toph. Aang looked up in confusion. What you blaming Appa? Asked Aang, rage at the edge of his voice. Yeah. You want to know how those bastards found us? Asked Toph before grabbing a handful of shedding and letting it fly. He's leaving a trail everywhere we go. Yelled Toph. Aang, not wanting to hear it, got into her face. How dare you? Appa saved your life 3 times today. If there's anyone to blame, it's you. You're always talking about how you carry your own weight, but you're not. He is. Appa's carrying your weight. He never had a problem flying when it was just the 3 of us. Yelled Aang. Toph, on the edge of her patience and anger, hit the ground, launching her pack into the air before catching it. I'm outta here. Yelled Toph. Sokka got in front of Toph. Wait, Toph. Let's just talk about this, said Sokka, trying to be kind to the girl. Toph only looked at the ground. Thanks for the offer, Sokka, but I'm not in the mood, said Toph, shifting Sokka out of her way as gently as possible, since he was the only one who was trying to be nice. But Naruto. Naruto had caught up to the Avatar's trail only 20 minutes ago and was only slightly ahead of Azula. Who should have been there within a few minutes. Naruto looked at the 2 trails and snorted. One trail was a fur trail, was the other was of broken tree tops. This kid must be a rookie. 2 trails with only one being smaller than the other, said Naruto. Easily the Avatar went west while his companions took the Bajan, came Azula's voice. Naruto turned his head and looked at Azula. What kept you, Zula? Asked Naruto. The trail went cold on us. But now we're back on track. Ty Lee follow the broken tree tops and get his companions. Naruto with me. We're following the fur, said Azula. But Sokka and Katara. Katara had water floating above her, while Sokka had his machete out and ready to do battle with the 2 Fire Nation girls. The siblings knew about the power of the 2 girls and had worked up a strategy to counter them. Hey there, cutie, said Ty Lee, smiling at Sokka. Katara frowned before throwing a water whip at Ty Lee. Ty Lee flipped backwards as Mai prepared to throw a knife at Katara, only to have Sokka charge at her and slash downwards and biting into the dirt as she stumbled backwards before kicking at Sokka. As she did, she unleashed 3 needles. Sokka barely had time to move out of the way, but a needle impacted his left shoulder. Sokka frowned but pulled the needle out of his shoulder, letting the blood drip down. Mai frowned at this. You're quite skilled for Water Tribe warrior, said Mai. And you're quite skilled with your weapons of choice, said Sokka, putting his blade up and stepping into a wide stance. Sokka charged at the girl and slashed at her. She ducked under it and pulled out a small knife and slashed at Sokka's arm. She caught him, but Sokka ignored the pain and kicked Mai in the stomach. Mai let out a grunt of pain, sliding back. Katara threw 3 discs of water at Ty Lee, who jumped up the trees and zigzagged between them, avoiding the attacks. She landed in front of Mai and disabled Sokka with 2 effective jabs. Sokka dropped his weapons as Katara was pinned to a tree not a yard away from her brother. Sokka tried to move, but his body didn't respond. How are you doing? Asked Sokka casually. Katara was struggling to get free before she just quit. Well, you know, said Katara, giving a small laugh. Mai crossed her arms. I thought when me and Ty Lee finally caught you guys, it would be more exciting. Oh well, victory is boring, said the dark girl dryly. Before Ty Lee could say anything, a blast of wind shot the two Fire Nation girls into the water. Appa banged his tail before turning to his friends. Sokka smiled. "Thanks for that, buddy," said Sokka as Appa licked his face. But Naruto and Azula. Naruto and Azula entered the abounded town and saw Aang sitting there with his legs crossed and staff in his lap. Naruto stepped forward with Azula just off to the left of him. "Alright, you've caught up to me. Now who are you?" asked Aang with an edge to his voice that Naruto easily pinpointed as a warning. Azula smirked. "What, can't you tell by the family resemblance?" "Here's a hint," said Azula, putting her right hand over her left eye and deepening her voice. "I must find the Avatar to regain my honor." Aang remained silent. Naruto smirked. "You're too damn serious, monk. Come on and laugh," said Naruto. "So what now?" asked Aang. Azula put her hand on her head as if thinking. Now it's over. You're tired and you have no place to go. You can run, but I'll catch you," said Azula as Naruto smirked. Aang stands up and looks Azula dead in her eyes. "I'm not running," said Aang. "Do you really want to fight me?" asked Azula. Suddenly someone jumps out of the alleyway. The person in question was about 18, stood at about 5'11", amber eyes with a large burn mark over his left eye, black hair that was cut short, wearing a Earth Kingdom presence robe and pants, as well as a hat that he threw away. "Yes, I really do," yelled the new fighter. Aang got wide-eyed at this. "Zuko," said Aang. Azula smirked. "I was wondering when you'd show up, Zuzu," said Azula with a fond, not so much, smile on her face. Aang snickered. "Zuzu," he said. Naruto looked at Azula. "Your brother, I take it, mistress?" asked Naruto, having never encountered Zuko before. Azula nodded. "Yes. And a real pain in my ass." Zuko got into his stance. "Back off, Azula. He's mine," yelled Zuka. Naruto saw an opportunity for a gay joke, but this was a little too serious for that kind of thing. Who the hell was he kidding? Azula got into her stance. "I'm not going anywhere, Zuzu," said Azula. Naruto smirked and followed Azula's lead. "This will be entertaining. If they can keep with our skills," said Naruto. The air grew tense as the air started swirl as Aang slowly tried to take advantage. Azula makes the first move by blasting a stream of blue fire at Zuko. Zuko knocks it back at Azula, who kicks it. Naruto charges at Aang and unloads a lightning bolt at him. Aang, not knowing anything about lightning, jumped into the air and unleashed an airwave at Naruto. In the same position Azula and Zuko have moved into taking to hand combat before Zuko does a sweeping kick that unleashed a powerful fire blast. Azula flips over this and fires a fireball at Aang. Aang sees it coming and knocks it back towards Azula and Zuko. Both cover themselves ready for the attack, but Naruto kicks it away before spinning and punching Zuko in the nose, sending him flying. Naruto takes his stance and starts throwing balls of fire at Zuko. Zuko starts to spin kick them out of the way before drawing his swords from the scabbard. Azula cursed. "Watch out for those blades. I may be good at bending, but Zuko is practically a master of dows. Add in his fire bending and he's a deadly fighter," said Azula. Naruto nodded. "What a time to forget my tucking sword," said Naruto. Zuko charged in and slashed at Naruto, unleashing a fire blast at Naruto. Naruto's side flipped to the right with Zuko slashing with his right blade. Naruto jumped and landed on the ground before doing a spinning fire kick. Zuko blocked with his swords and jumped onto a building, unleashing fireballs from his blades. Azula glared at Aang as he was blocking her attacks before she jumped up and slashed Aang's face with her long nails. Aang yelled as blood started to drip down his face. Aang landed on the ground and ran into a building with Azula right behind him. Azula entered the building and almost lost her balance at the door. As she looked down, she saw that there was no floor. Aang sat on an air ball and waved at her. Azula pulled back and did the splits before coming up and off to the right of the door. At the door, Zuko came through, blocking a fire blast from Naruto, knocking him back, making him fall onto the ground hard enough to kick up a lot of dust. Naruto jumped into the air and at Aang. Aang gasped and the air ball dispersed as Naruto impacted the wall. Azula followed him below before throwing him through a wall with a fire blast. Naruto flipped down and landed and followed Azula out of the wall. Aang noticed that with Zuko out of the fight, it was now a 2-on-1 situation. Naruto charged forward at Aang and began to fire blasts of fire at him, making Aang zigzag between the walls before landing on the roof. Azula followed up with a sharp blast of fire, cutting the roof. Aang was able to cling to another section as Azula cut that one too, sending Aang plummeting into the building, with the roof falling on him somewhat. Azula walks in with Naruto behind her. They both light the room with their respective fires and begin their advance on Aang. Azula smirked. Azula began to bend lightning to finish this fight when a water whip wraps around her hand and fires off to the side. Naruto turned around and saw the water-bending girl. She then threw a disc at Azula before Naruto tackled her out of the way. "Katara!" yelled Aang in excitement. Azula turned and chased after Katara only to slide as Sokka nearly took her head off with his blade. Naruto joined her in the attack. An old man with a bald head, grey beard, and a potbelly appeared as Zuko slowly awoke. "Uncle," said Zuko in a groggy voice. "Come on Zuko. Get up," said Iroh. As they head towards the fight. Azula and Naruto are holding their own in the battle when they're both blasted into a corner by Toph. "I thought you guys could use a little help," said Toph with a smirk. Katara smiled at the younger girl. "Thanks," said Toph. As Azula and Naruto tried to make a run for it, Iroh and Zuko blocked their path. Naruto growled. "Methinks that we are surrounded," said Naruto. Azula looks around. "Well, look at this. Enemies and traitors all working together." "I'm done," said Azula holding up her hands, as did Naruto. "I know when I'm beaten." "You got me." "A princess surrenders with honor," said Azula. Naruto snorted. "As a shinobi there is only death or capture. Not for me and not for Azula," said Naruto. Launched a blast of fire at Iroh as Azula launched one at Sokka. The black fire hit Iroh in the chest, making his scream in pain, while the blue fire sent Sokka flying back unconscious and burns over his arms and chest. "Sokka!" yelled Kurata, Toph, and Aang. "No!" yelled Zuko. The four benders laughed the four elements at Azula and Naruto. Azula had just enough time to bring up a shield as the elements hit, making an explosion of such power and magnitude that it blasted everyone back. The four knew that Azula had gotten away and turned towards their friends. Zuko ran over to Iroh, while Katara ran over to Sokka. Zuko turned to Aang. "For today only we have our own to tend to Avatar." "Be gone," said Zuko. Aang didn't say anything as Appa arrived and they took off. But Team Avatar. As they landed, Toph made the ground as soft as possible as Aang gently lifted the boy that had become something of a brother to him off of Appa, and Katara got to work trying to fix her brother's wounds. "Katara, is Sokka going to be okay?" asked Toph, worried about Sokka more than anyone could tell. Katara had tears running down her face. "He'll be fine once I'm done, but that Fire Nation fish is going to pay with her life," hissed Katara as she focused on healing her brother. But Naruto and Azula. Naruto and Azula had escaped only thanks to Naruto's skills in ninjutsu. Azula had a nasty looking wound on her side thanks to Katara forcing Naruto to carry her. "Next time I see that water tribe fish I'm going to burn my name into her ass," seethed Azula in pain, clutching her right side. Naruto laid her on the ground and slowly removed her armor. Taking a closer look at the wound. It was deep and bleeding badly. Naruto took a piece of wood and shoved it into her mouth. "Bite down hard, this is going to hurt a little," said Naruto, taking a knife and heating it up. He pressed it to her side and Azula screamed in such intense pain. The last thing she saw before she passed out was Naruto's worried eyes. End chapter. So this part ends here. If you want to see next part of this series, like the video now and share the story with your friends. Bye bye.